Age 34. One penalty. His farewell letter to the World Cup. July 2026. New York. The lights at MetLife Stadium wash over the pitch. The moment the final whistle blows, Neymar drops to his knees. He buries his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking, and for a long time, he doesn't get up. The camera drifts slowly across the stands. Some fans hold up his jersey, sobbing. Others rise in silence and simply clap. No one rushes him. It's as if everyone understands. This isn't just a man kneeling after a 1-2 loss to Norway, a Brazil side knocked out in the round of 16. This is the end of a farewell that's been 12 years and 4 World Cups in the making. He's 34 now. This was his 4th World Cup and his last. And in a strange, almost poetic twist, this final match of his international career took place on the very same ground where it all began back in 2010, New York. Fate came full circle, quietly stitching the beginning and the end together in the same city. If the Neymar of 2014 was a shooting star tearing across the sky, the Neymar of 2026 was something else entirely. A candle burned down to its last inch. No longer blinding, no longer dazzling, but still stubbornly giving up its final light and warmth to the pitch he'd loved for half his life. Hey everyone, welcome back to Futverse. Today we're telling the story of one man, Neymar, the last man of Brazilian Samba football. Rewind to 2014, on the eve of the World Cup on home soil. Neymar was 22, the face of the tournament, and the heaviest expectation Brazil had carried in decades. A nation that hadn't lifted the trophy in 24 years placed the crown of Pelé's heir directly on his head. The narrative around him was split down the middle. Some hailed him as the second coming, others tore him apart. Too young, too flashy, couldn't handle the big stage, just a marketing product dressed up as the next king of football. He answered every bit of that noise with his performances that summer. In the opener against Croatia, Brazil gifted the opponent an own goal in the first minutes, and the mood inside the Maracanã turned ice cold. In the 29th minute, Neymar took a shot from outside the box that curled off the post and into the net. Equalizer. And the stadium roared back to life. In the 71st minute, with the weight of the entire country bearing down on him, he stepped up to a penalty and buried it without a flicker of hesitation, sealing the win. That night, bars and plazas and street corners across Brazil chanted his name. It was the night the whole country finally claimed him as their own. Next came Cameroon, and it happened to be his 100th cap for the national team. He scored twice in the 17th and 35th minutes, turning his centenary into something close to a personal showcase. After the final whistle, he dropped to the grass and kissed it, tears streaming down his face. But the match that truly cemented his reputation for nerve was the round of 16 penalty shootout against Chile. The whole team was strung tight to the point of suffocation. Regulation ended level. Extra time changed nothing. When it was Neymar's turn to step up, the entire stadium seemed to hold its breath. Even the commentators went silent for a few rare seconds. He didn't hesitate. A short run-up, a clean strike, straight into the net. Brazil survived and advanced to the quarterfinals. In that moment, almost everyone believed Brazil's 6th star was within reach. Celebrations started early in the streets. Newspapers ran front pages proclaiming Hexa before it had even happened. But no one could have guessed how fast the fall would come after such a peak. In the quarterfinal against Colombia, the 88th minute, the score still tight. Tension thick in the air. Colombian defender Zúñiga came in from behind and drove his knee straight into Neymar's lower back. Neymar collapsed instantly, curling up on the grass in agony, hands pressed flat against the turf, his face twisted in pain. His third vertebra had fractured, right there on the field. The image of him being carried off on a stretcher became one of the defining moments of that entire World Cup. The camera stayed on his face. He made no attempt to hide it. The tears just came, raw and unfiltered. This wasn't a performance. This was a 22-year-old watching his dream get cut off at the knees in real time. The Maracanã went dead silent, his sobs the only sound picked up by the microphones. The team doctor's diagnosis was brutal. No room for hope. At least a month in bed. 4 months before he could return to any football-related contact training. His 2014 World Cup was over. He didn't even make it to the end of the knockout stage. The door was simply shut on him. And it got crueler. Still. He didn't hide away to nurse his wounds in private. Instead, he sat in front of a television and watched, live, as Brazil suffered the 1-7 humiliation against Germany in the semifinal, the darkest night in Brazilian football history. The glory that should have been his to defend became a disgrace. He could only watch helplessly from the sidelines. According to later interviews, that night, alone in his hospital room, he turned off the TV and said nothing for a long, long time. That injury was like a nail, quietly driven into every major turning point of the 12 years that followed. From then on, the shadow of injury followed him into every major tournament. If 2014 was a physical blow, the 2018 World Cup in Russia was a psychological one. Coming back from old injuries, Neymar was fouled a staggering 63 times across the tournament, hounded and clattered into in nearly every match. To avoid getting hurt again, he had no choice but to go down often, roll around, and appeal to the referee, a completely understandable instinct for self-preservation. But the internet turned it into a joke. Clips of him hitting the deck were spliced together with exaggerated sound effects and comedic subtitles. Neymar rolling became an overnight meme, spinning off into countless mashup compilations, racking up tens of millions of views. No one cared that his injuries were real. No one bothered to check whether the fouls actually happened. The public only remembered a Neymar who liked to act, conveniently forgetting every time he'd gritted his teeth and run himself into the ground for his team. Pain on the pitch became punchlines off it. For a player in what should have been the prime of his career, that kind of reversal was a wound that's hard to put into words. Brazil went out in the quarterfinals that year, beaten by Belgium. When the final whistle blew, Neymar stood alone at midfield, eyes empty, full of something between defiance and heartbreak, refusing to leave with his teammates for a long time. It echoed the stretcher scene from 4 years earlier. Same man, same pain, but a completely different reaction from the public. He later admitted in an interview that period was one of the hardest stretches of his career, and what hurt more than the injury itself was being misunderstood. Qatar, 2022. In the winter desert, Neymar took the field once again carrying an injury. In the opener against Serbia, his ankle swelled and twisted visibly, forcing him to sit out the next 2 group games, watching anxiously from the bench as his teammates fought on without him. He forced his way back for the quarterfinal against Croatia and delivered one of the finest moments of his international career. In the 105th minute of extra time, he and a teammate pulled off a textbook give and go. Receive, lay it off, receive again, one fluid motion. Then a calm finish into a tight angle. That goal tied him with Pelé's long-standing record of 77 international goals. The camera caught him throwing his arms wide, a joy that had clearly been bottled up for years finally breaking loose. He was nearly in tears. Commentators kept repeating the 2 names, Pelé and Neymar, in the same breath, as if witnessing a handoff across generations. But the happiness didn't last. Just 12 minutes later, Croatia equalized. and the match was dragged into a brutal penalty shootout. Neymar was scheduled to take Brazil's fifth kick, but the shootout was already decided before it got to him. Brazil went down in the shootout, and he never even got the chance to walk up to that spot. He didn't even get to try. The camera found him sitting alone on the grass at the center circle, head in his hands, sobbing, unable to get up for a long time. Teammates hovered nearby, wanting to comfort him, not sure what to say. He later admitted in an interview that this loss might be a nightmare he never fully escapes. "I think I'll dream for the rest of my life about that penalty spot I never got to walk up to." At club level, Neymar's story was no less turbulent. Injury after injury, without pause. In 2023, a torn ACL put his career on hold once again. Surgery, rehab, recovery, a process so long it tested everyone's patience, including his own. He then left for the Saudi League, where over a 569-day contract, he made just 7 appearances, spending most of his time either on the sideline or in the recovery room. Mockery poured in, retired on a paycheck, past his prime, and social media filled with unflattering memes. His transfer value cratered. The Prodigy, once valued at over 100 million euros, once considered the heir apparent to the game's throne, was nearly forgotten outside the spotlight. Even when he chose to return to his boyhood club, Santos, hoping to rediscover his form and his love for the game, he wasn't met with flowers and applause. In Brazil's domestic league, plenty of young defenders saw a reckless, hard tackle on him as their shortcut to a headline. After all, having Neymar on your defensive stat sheet is its own kind of currency. His knees, already worn down by injury and surgical hardware, ached with every landing, every change of direction, and still, he ran his heart out in every match. 944 days away from the national team. The world had all but written him off, the once-in-a-generation Brazilian talent who would never again set foot on a World Cup stage. One outlet even ran a segment with the title, "Neymar's World Cup is over." The turning point came on May 19th, 2026. Head coach Carlo Ancelotti announced Brazil's official squad for the World Cup in the US, Canada, and Mexico. The moment Neymar was read out on live television, even the commentators froze. The comment sections exploded, and so did he. According to details that later came out, he was sitting at home on his couch at the time. At first, he just stared blankly at the screen, taking a few seconds to fully register what he'd heard. Then he lost control entirely, hands over his face, shoulders shaking. It wasn't a laugh of pure joy. It was 12 years of frustration, defiance, and pain, all breaking through the dam in a single second, released completely without holding anything back. He knew this might be his last chance to ever wear the national team jersey, his last chance at a World Cup stage. He later wrote on social media, "I waited for this day for so long, that at times I thought it would never come." Carrying a grade 2 calf strain into the 2026 World Cup, Neymar spent the entire tournament as a substitute, never once starting. For a man who used to be the absolute focal point of the team, that was an agonizing shift in role, but he never once complained. Through the first 2 group games, still nursing the muscle injury, he sat quietly on the bench, watching his teammates battle it out, cheering and clapping to help the team bank crucial points. In the final group match against Scotland, he finally came off the bench in the 76th minute. In just 14 minutes, he steadied the rhythm up front, passing, moving, linking play, helping Brazil secure a big win and top spot in the group. In the round of 16 against Japan, Brazil got stuck in a grinding, deadlocked battle, finally scraping through with a late winner. Neymar spent the whole match warming up on the sideline, ready and waiting. But the call never came. All he could do was celebrate for his teammates with everything he had. The real spotlight was saved for the very last match. Quarterfinal, Brazil versus Norway. Erling Haaland was on fire, scoring twice, and Brazil found themselves down 2 goals, hanging by a thread. The stands went quiet. In the 67th minute, Neymar was called into the fray. For the next 23 minutes, he worked to stretch the Norwegian defense, trying to open up any crack of hope for his team, even with his body running on fumes. In the 10th minute of stoppage time, Casemiro won a crucial penalty in a scramble inside the box. Every eye in the stadium turned to the man walking slowly toward the spot, 34 years old, carrying a body full of old scars, a career nearing its final page. He didn't take a long run-up. He didn't hesitate for even a moment. He set himself, took a breath, and struck it softly. The ball rolled just inside the post, past the keeper's reach, and into the net. That goal made him the oldest scorer in Brazilian World Cup history, and completed something remarkable. A goal in 4 consecutive World Cups, 2014, 2018, 2022, 2026, spanning the entire arc of his career, from its golden peak to its twilight. But that hard-won goal wasn't enough to change the outcome. The final score stood at 1-2. Brazil was out in the round of 16, its worst World Cup finish in 36 years. The moment the whistle blew, he dropped to the grass, face in his hands, shoulders shaking without end. That kneel was the ending, the final period on the sentence. A lot of people love to talk about Neymar's wasted talent, about his flair for theatrics on the pitch, his meltdowns. Few people stop to really look back and ask what he actually went through across these 12 years and 4 World Cups. In 2014, a violent knee to the back fractured his spine, forcing him out early, leaving him to watch the 1-7 collapse from the sidelines. In 2018, he was fouled 63 times and got mocked across the internet as a drama queen for simply trying to protect his own body. In 2022, he played through a swollen, twisted ankle, tied Pelé's record, and then went down in a shootout he never even got to take part in. In 2026, carrying a leg injury, he waited on the bench, pouring what little was left of his career into the final 23 minutes and 1 stoppage time penalty. Neymar never truly lost to his own ability on the ball. His real opponent was injury after injury that refused to let him go, and a wave of hostile public opinion that always seemed to arrive faster and last longer than the pain itself. People remembered the tattoos, the parties, the occasional flash of arrogance, while quietly ignoring what it took for him to come back from injury again and again, and the courage it took to get back up every single time he went down. In a world run on clicks and clips, the name Neymar had long since been reduced to a stack of labels, tattoos, parties, scandal, tantrums, tears. Every time he made a mistake, the labels got dragged back out and used against him. Every time he succeeded, they were set aside, just briefly, waiting for the next slip-up. Few people ever bothered to look at what he gave up in the places the cameras never reached. To make it back in time for the 2022 World Cup, he pushed through weeks of rehab training at more than twice the normal intensity. His physiotherapist described it as watching him fight his own body. For this one last shot in 2026, he turned down nearly every commercial commitment and poured everything into recovery, even bringing on a sports psychologist to help him work through the mental scars left by years of repeated injury. He wasn't unaware of what people said about him. In one interview, he said, with a wry smile, "If I smile, they say I'm not serious enough. If I cry, they say, I'm weak. If I go down, they say, I'm acting. If I push through and stay on my feet, the injury ends up breaking me for real anyway. That quote got screenshotted and shared by fans over and over. For the first time, in the comments underneath, a lot of people started to wonder whether they, too, had once been part of the crowd laughing at him without thinking twice. Look closely at his career, and a brutal pattern emerges. Almost every major tournament came with an injury test beforehand, and every single time, he chose to grit his teeth and play through it instead of sitting out to protect himself. Call it stubbornness if you want, but it looks a lot more like love. Bone deep, the kind that keeps handing itself back over to the game, even knowing full well the body can't recreate the player it used to carry. For a lot of fans who grew up in the 80s, 90s, and even the 2000s, Neymar's World Cup career runs almost parallel to their own coming of age. In 2014, when he first burst onto the scene, a lot of them were still in school, glued to the TV, cheering every run he made. In 2018, when he got mocked for rolling, a lot of them were in the most lost, uncertain years of their own lives, sharing the memes with one hand while feeling a quiet ache with the other. In 2022, when he broke down crying at the center circle, a lot of them had already stepped into adulthood and understood, for the first time, what it feels like to give everything and still fall short. And by 2026, when he finally knelt down for the last time, a lot of the people who once laughed at him realized they, too, had grown older and only now truly understood everything he'd carried across those 12 years. Maybe that's the most moving part of Neymar's World Cup story. It was never just one player's personal journey. It became a mirror for an entire generation of fans. Through his rises and falls, they caught glimpses of their own youth, full of the same regrets and the same quiet decision to keep going anyway. Some say the most moving stories about talent were never the ones about a clean, triumphant rise to the top. They're the ones where someone with extraordinary gifts gets knocked down by fate, over and over, and chooses every single time to grit their teeth and get back up and keep running. Neymar likely never gets his hands on that trophy. He won't lift it 3 times like Pelé, and he won't be crowned in his twilight years like Messi. His World Cup story is an imperfect epic, written in injury, misunderstanding, persistence, and a redemption that came far too late. But that 34-year-old man, dragging an injured leg, still willing to walk up to a penalty spot in stoppage time, that raw, scarred, and still dancing sincerity might be the last and most precious piece of spirit that Samba football has left to give this era. That night in New York, that all-or-nothing penalty wasn't just a goal. It wasn't a stat line meant to comfort himself. It was Neymar's letter to the World Cup and to his entire youth. The gentlest and the most tragic goodbye he could write. After the whistle, he'll carry that regret off the field with him. But the image of that ball curling off the post and into the corner of the net will stay forever in the hearts of everyone who watched him rise and fall. Years from now, when people talk about the 2026 World Cup in North America, they might not remember who lifted the trophy, but they will remember the man in Brazil's number 10, kneeling on the grass in New York, face buried in his hands. He never got his 6th star, but across 12 years and 4 World Cups, he became a legend of another kind, a legend about persistence, about being misunderstood, and about simply refusing to give up. Some say football was never just a game of winners and losers. It's more like a mirror, reflecting how people carry themselves in the face of fate. Across 12 turbulent years, Neymar showed everyone this. Talent can be knocked down by injury, twisted by public opinion, forced off the stage in the years it should have shone brightest. But as long as that fire inside hasn't gone out, there's always one more chance. To run one more time. To take one more shot. To hand yourself over once more to the field you've loved your entire life. That, maybe, is the best answer Neymar could leave for this era.